In this video, I'm going to show you how I document my internal processes to ensure that no mistakes are being made when we set up new marketing campaigns, and also to ensure that we have a process in place to quality check everything to make sure that no mistakes are published on behalf of our clients. So at the end of this video, this is what you're going to learn how to make. It's a spreadsheet which documents step by step each step of our process and updates dynamically so that we can visually see at what part in the process we are and to ensure that each step has been correctly completed. So let's dive into it. Alright, so here's the blank kind of process template that I have created for this video, and basically what you see is a step-by-step process, in this case demonstrating or walking through how to set up a new Facebook ad campaign. This is just a template for demo purposes, but hopefully you'll be able to see kind of the intended purpose of this. So visually what you'll notice is that we've got kind of these red boxes and yellow boxes which signify that there's an incomplete part of the process. And so the reason that you might want to use something like this is just to ensure that you're completing each step of your process correctly. And then the second part here to make sure that if somebody's reviewing your work, to make sure that each part of it has been reviewed appropriately. So this is going to be especially helpful. You're developing a team and you're going to start outsourcing your work. Basically what you can do is document your step-by-step processes and procedures and then hand this off to somebody on your team and know that they're going to be able to complete and execute those tasks correctly based on your preferred approach. So let me just briefly walk you through how I would use this. So the example here is for a Facebook ad campaign, but obviously you can use it for any kind of process. And basically all I'm documenting here are all of the steps and all of the necessary information that allow me to successfully execute a Facebook campaign. So you can see that I've broken it down into headers. This is information required before a new campaign is launched. And then when you actually create and set up a new Facebook ad campaign, you've got your campaign set up, your ad set up, and then your ad setup. And then at the bottom we have these big boxes which make it very clear whether or not the campaign setup, and IC, which stands for internal critique, or you could have QA, which is quality assurance, basically just somebody reviewing each step. So this just determines whether or not that step is being completed as well. So some important things that are required for me before I set up a campaign is the start date. So let's say we're starting this campaign today, which is 2019, the month is 09, the day is 21. So that's the campaign start date. And you'll see once I complete that, it turns green, which signifies that I've at least documented that part of the process in this spreadsheet. And then the campaign is going to end, let's say, on 10th month and the 15th day. So when I do that, this gray box, the gray boxes are not intended to be completed. They're going to update automatically based on other information that you input. So this is going to calculate the amount of days between the start and end date. So I find this is quite helpful for me because a lot of times campaigns will not be, like an even amount of days, and usually based on the amount of days that a campaign is running, that's going to determine how much money I spend each day. So rather than having to calculate that information myself, I just input this formula into the spreadsheet so it does it for me. So in order to get this, you can see all we're doing is taking the end date, subtracting the start date, and then we have a space and then we're putting days in brackets, and all that's doing is appending the word days to the end of this number. So the total budget for the campaign, let's say, is $1,000. So now this is gonna update this next cell, the daily budget, to take the total budget and divide it by the total campaign duration so that we can see our daily budget. And this is helpful because when I'm setting up a campaign, again, I don't have to do that math. I can just go in and set the daily budget to this amount. So some other things that might be helpful for you, if you've got a landing page URL, you might put the link to that in here. If you have campaign creative that somebody else on your team developed, maybe you're sharing that in a Google Drive or in a shared drive somewhere else, you might include a link to that here. And documenting it in this spreadsheet just makes it really easy and quick to access so that you're not scrambling to find where everything is located. Campaign strategy, maybe you've got some information documented from an account lead. Client goal, let's say in this case, is to increase sales. That's based on our strategy. So the Facebook KPIs, so this would be what the metric that you're measuring. So in this case, we're going to optimize for purchases, and then how many purchases do we want? So in this case, we're going to aim for 200. So this number here, estimated cost per result, is just taking the total budget, dividing it by our goal KPI number, and this is telling us not estimating how much this campaign is going to generate in terms of cost per lead, but basically this is what we need to achieve in order to reach this goal based on this budget, $5 cost per purchase. So then we have the same kind of setup for each step of the campaign, ad set and ad. So basically what you do is document your campaign setup step by step based on kind of your preferred approach. So in this case, we've documented a preferred naming convention. So as I'm going through and setting up my campaign, I would refer to this spreadsheet as I set up that campaign. So here I am in my ads manager, and I've clicked on create a new campaign. So basically what I would do is, as I'm going through this process, I would just follow this spreadsheet. So I see, okay, this is the naming convention. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to go back to my campaign. I'm going to name it this. So the campaign, maybe the campaign name is something like fall sales event or whatever it is. And then we've got month and year. So this is September 2019. So then I'm going to copy that. Oops. And then paste that. So I'm just documenting everything that I do in this spreadsheet. The marketing objective, so let's say in this case, there might be certain cells where you want the person setting up the campaign to just simply either input the information like this, or maybe just verify what they did. So let's say in this example, which bid strategy did you use? Maybe we have the option to select a certain bid strategy. Maybe in this case, we're going to use bid cap. So if I scroll down, select bid cap. So that would be an example of having an option to choose different campaign settings. Whereas in this case, you might say, all right, you don't have an option. The marketing objective we want you to use for this process is lead generation. So here you're just selecting, was this complete or not complete? Did you use campaign budget optimization? We're going to go back. Yes, that's turned on. Did you use a daily or lifetime budget? So again, here's an example where we might choose whether we're using lifetime or daily. So we're going to say daily budget. And then based on this, we know that our daily budget should be $41.67. And so forth. So this is how you would use this templated process or procedure to execute your strategies. Now I'm just going to complete the rest of this with some filler information. So you'll see once we've completed each of these, it's going to turn this complete box green with the word yes. So we can see very quickly that, all right, this campaign has been set up without having to go through in detail. It's just kind of a quick visual verification. So the next step after that, once a campaign is set up, maybe your account lead has to go through and quality check everything to make sure that it's set up correctly. That's often best practice for a lot of agencies and companies. So that's what this column here is intended for. So let's say that I'm the person who's responsible for doing this internal critique. I would basically go through and verify that all of this information is correct. So I would go through the campaign as it's set up in the ad manager and just verify, yep, that's correct, that's the correct end date, that's the correct campaign duration based on our strategy, etc. So you would just go through this step by step, and then I'm just going to copy and paste this just so that we can move along. And so let's say, for example, we were going through here and we noticed that okay, they are using campaign budget optimization and in this case we're going to approve that, and we noticed that they're using a bid cap strategy, but we know that in this particular case we would probably want them to use the lowest cost bid strategy. So because that's not what we want them to do. We're going to say not approved, and then please use lowest cost bid strategy because of reasons. So then once you complete your internal critique, you could send a message to the person responsible for setting this up and say, hey, I reviewed it, there's a couple changes, please refer to this document. So then they could come back into this document and quickly see, okay, this is the thing that wasn't approved, this is the reason why, and here's the change that I need to make. So let's say that everything is finally complete, including this. It's going to turn everything green. And so now these update so that we can visually see that we've set up the campaign and gone through our IC process. So now I'm going to show you how you can actually create one of these yourself. So I've got this new tab open, and I've got some of the tasks already implemented. And in order to figure out what tasks you need to add to your process sheet, basically you just need to go through your own process and just add all of the steps, and then make sure, ask yourself questions as you're setting up the process, like, is there any other information that would be helpful for me as I'm setting this up? So for example, like I showed you before, this total campaign duration in days, and then the daily budget, that calculation that I use here, that's not necessarily something like a step that you need in the ad setup process, but this is extra helpful information that makes it easier for me to set that stuff up. So it's not just step by step the steps, like the implementation steps, but also other information that you can add to your process that might make it easier for you or your team to implement. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up these formulas here. So the total campaign duration, this is simply equal to, I'm going to do this minus the campaign end date minus the campaign start date, space, ampersand, and then we're going to do these quotation marks. And this is just going to append this string of text at the end of this. So right now it says 0 days. So if we were to insert a date here, it's going to update dynamically based on that. And this is kind of my preferred date format, but if you want to change that, you can go up here to format, numbers, and then you can choose some of the presets here so that it looks like this, which is day, month, year. You can include the time in there as well. But I go more formats, more date and time formats, and then I like to have the year, month, day, because to me that makes the most sense. So then I'm going to change the color of this text to gray, and then the color of the cell to gray as well, just to visually indicate that this is not a cell that I should be updating manually. The total budget and then the daily budget, the only change I'm going to make here is just to make sure that it's a currency and not just a normal number. So currency rounded. Actually, I'm going to do this one here. And then if I type in a number just to verify that that's correct, and obviously that's not in my currency, so I'm going to go Canadian dollar, and we're good to go there. And if you need to change the decimal place, you can just click on these buttons here. Landing page URL, that's just a standard input. Client goal, and then estimated cost per result. Actually, no, sorry, daily budget is one that we were going to update dynamically. So this is going to be equal to your total budget divided by how many days. Oh, so the reason this isn't working is because this cell has this string appended to the end of it, so it can't divide by a number with text. So instead of B5, we're going to do campaign end date minus campaign start date, and that should resolve that. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to gray out this box just so we know not to edit that stuff manually. And then the other one we're going to change is the estimated cost per result. So this is going to be equal to our total budget divided by the total number of results that we want to achieve with this campaign. So right now there's no number in here, but if we add a number, that updates dynamically, so that's good. The text color is correct. We're just going to gray out the background. So it looks like we're pretty good to go here. On to the next section. This first one is just a manual text entry, so we're going to keep that as is. Now with this one, like I was demonstrating before, we want the person setting up this campaign to select lead generation. So this box is going to be either complete or not complete. So rather than having them type that information in manually, we're going to go to data validation, and then we're going to click on criteria, list of items, and then we're going to list the items separated by a comma that we want them to be able to choose from. So in this case, complete is the first item, and then the second one is not complete. Press save. So now we have this little drop down menu where we have the option to choose those two options. So campaign budget optimization, we're going to do the same thing. So if I just copy this and then just paste it in there, we're going to get the same options. So that's good. Did you use daily budget or lifetime? So we're going to do the same thing, but we're just going to create two different options. So list of items, daily or lifetime, save. And then which bid strategy did you use? So we're going to do the same thing here, data validation, list from range, and then our list in this case are these options: lowest cost, cost cap, list from items, bid cap, target cost, and no spaces between the commas. And there we go. Okay, so the other thing we want to do here, let's start with the this complete box here. So what we want is for this box to say yes if everything here is complete, and if there's any empty cells, we want it to say no to signify that it's not complete. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is equals, and then use the if formula. So the if formula is basically if this condition is met, and then condition, if that condition is met, true, then what do we want it to say? We want it to say yes. So the condition we want is, actually what we're going to do is if any of these cells are empty, that means that it's not complete, so we want it to say no. Otherwise, we want it to say yes, it is complete, because all the cells are complete, which signifies that the procedure has been, each step has been completed. So the condition is what we need to figure out here. The condition is all of these cells from here all the way down to B20 are equal to blank. Hopefully that makes sense. So what we're saying is if any of these cells are blank, that means it's not completed. Then we want the text here to read no. Otherwise, it's going to read yes. So in order to do that, we're going to say count if, put a bracket, and then we're just going to drag this all the way down to here, put a comma, and then in order for you to signify if it's blank, we're just going to put two quotation marks. The quotation marks just looks for a string between the two quotation marks, and because there's nothing in between it, that's signifying that it's blank. And then we're going to hit enter. So you can see right now it says no, so that means that there's fields that are not completed yet. So if we just put in some placeholder text here, now all of the fields are complete, but it still says, or it says yes. But there's one thing I should point out here. This cell here is included in that range. So there's a space here. So if we take out that space, it's going to say no. So that's just something to be aware of. Just make sure that if you have empty cells that you're not using, just put a space in there and you should be good. So we're good for the campaign setup. The next thing we're going to do is set up this IC. So in this case, each one of these boxes is going to have a selection of either approved or not approved. So in order to do that, I'm going to select all of these cells. I'm holding control right now. And we're going to go to data validation, same as we did before, list of items. And the two options are approved and not approved. And it did something weird there. So we're just going to copy that cell, highlight these ones, and paste. And so now every cell should have that same option of selecting either approved or not approved. So let's put approved in here. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to highlight all of these cells, holding Control now, and then Control Shift V. That's just going to paste the text without any formatting or anything. So now what we want is for this cell to read either yes or no. And it's going to be a little bit different than this one, because this one we're saying if there is text at all in any of these cells, we want it to say yes. But in this case, it could read not approved, in which case we don't want it to say yes if there's simply text in it, because sometimes the text could signify that it's not complete. So instead what we want is to say this cell will read yes if all of these cells only have approved in it. So in order to do that, I'm going to go back to this demonstration sheet here and show you the formula that we're using. So it's an if formula. So again, it's going to be if condition, and then if that condition is met, the text is going to read yes, and if it's not met, that text is going to read no. So in order for this to be yes, that means that all of these cells need to equal approved. That's what the string of text needs to read. So in order to do that, we're going to say, we're going to use the AND function. So if this condition, and the condition is and all of these cells, the text is equal to approve, then that condition, if it's met, will be yes. If not, then it will read no. So this is the string that we need to create. We need basically the cell name equals approved in quotations, a comma, and then repeat that for each one of the cells that we want. So obviously that can be pretty time consuming. If you were to just go in and type that manually, it would look something like this: equals if and then we would need to do, okay, what's the first cell? It's C3 equals approved, comma, and then we would need to repeat that for each cell. So obviously that's not super time conducive to do. So what we're going to do, I'm going to show you how to speed up this process here. But before I do that, I'm just going to show you real quick. We're going to do comma. If it's true, equals yes. If it's not true, equals no. All right. So it reads yes because right now we're only looking at C3, which at the moment is reading approved. So in order to create that comma separated list of all of these cells, we're going to do the following. So this first cell is C3, and we want to go down to C20. So I'm going to do C3, and if I just drag this down, we have a list all the way down to C20. Now we don't want to capture any of the headers. So this is, we don't want it to include this one here. So that's C15. So what I'm going to do is go through, find C15, and then just delete that row. So next what we want is to create a list, but with the equals approved after it, right? We want it to look like this: C3 equals approved. Whoops. So we want to have this added to all of these cells here. So in order to make this happen, what we need to do is do equals and then concatenate, which is basically just means to join together. So what we want is for this new cell to read the value in this cell, which is C3, and then add a comma, and then your quotation mark, which is going to start a string, and we want it to read equals approved, and then add another comma at the end. Right now, here's the problem: if we just hit enter, you're going to see that there's an error, and the reason for that is because of these quotation marks. Because what we want to achieve is a cell which has quotation marks in the string. So the problem is when you use quotation marks in a Google Sheets function or an Excel function, it's like we are doing right here. It's going to try and include the text that's in between it. So because we're trying to include the quote text, all we need to do is add an extra quotation mark on the outside of both of those quotation marks, and that solves the problem. Hopefully that made sense. So we're going to drag that all the way down. So now we have a list of all of these cells with the equals approved appended to it. So the next thing we want to do is create a comma separated list of all of these values. So basically what we're trying to achieve is something that looks like this. C4 equals approved, etc., all the way down with comma separated values for each one of these. So in order to achieve that, what we're going to do is use the concatenate function again, is equal to this cell, comma, quotation marks, and then put a comma in quotation marks because that's the next thing that we want to include, another comma, and then this cell here. So what that did was it took this cell, added a comma, and then added the value in this cell here. So if we just drag this all the way to the bottom, what this is going to do is create a comma separated list of all of those values. So we're going to copy that, we're going to go into this formula here, and then we're going to replace that, and we should be good to go. So I'm just going to delete these here. So you can see right now it says yes, because all of these fields have approved, and if we change one of them to not approved, then it says no, same as if we just simply delete the text altogether. So the next thing we want to do is add some colors just so that we can make it more visual and easy to read. So for this campaign setup column, all we want to do, I'm just holding control and selecting all of the cells that we would go and manually update, and then I'm going to click on format, conditional formatting, and then this is where we're going to apply some conditional color formatting. So if the cell is not empty, so if it has some information in it, we want it to be green in color, so that's good. We're going to add another rule and say if the cell is empty, we want the color to be red. Done. These are the two conditional rules we've applied, and so every cell is green, but if we delete something, we can see it's now red. So again, this just makes it visually easy for us to go and quickly spot the places where we haven't updated yet. So the next thing we want to do is we can update these ones here. So if it's equal to yes, we want it to be green, and if it's no, then we want it to be red. So conditional formatting. If it's equal to yes, we want it to be green. If it's equal to no, we want it to be red. Done. And there we go. And now we're going to do a similar thing for the IC. My camera just died, but that's okay. So what we're going to do is format this IC column so that it's green if it's approved, and it's red if it's not approved. And then we're also going to make it yellow if there's no value at all. So we're going to highlight all the cells. Same thing as before. Format, conditional formatting. If it's equal to approved, we want it to be green. Add another rule. If it's equal to not approved, we want it to be red. Add another rule. And then if it's empty, we want it to be yellow. And there we go. So now as the ICer, I can see, the yellow ones are the ones that I haven't reviewed yet. And then if you're the person who has set up the campaign, you can see the red ones are the ones that have not been approved. So you'll see that this cell here is still red, but if we change that to approved, everything works and we're good to go. So I hope that was helpful. That's all I've got for you in this video. Let me know if you have any questions about how to set this up yourself, and let me know if you have any creative ideas about how you're documenting your own processes. I'm always curious to improve my own processes as well. So I'll talk to you guys in the next video.